mean,
I think
Lynch.
her comments were not as good. Oh, okay.
Everything else in the original was, yeah. I mean, you have to correct for time in terms of like the cinematography and the technical competence, but yeah. Okay. Order in the room, please. Yes, that's you, Hank. Sit down. Mr. Richardson, thank you. We have now reached the time at which we're going to have a SPICE working group meeting. Welcome, everyone. This is the part where I welcome everyone to the room and remind you all of your obligations as far as it relates to the IETF procedures. Okay, if you can't read it, there's some links on this one, which points to the various processes that are applicable in this context. You will have seen these in more legible forms in other meetings this week. I encourage you to find a legible version of this and familiarize yourself with the rules under which we operate here. This covers a number of things like IPR obligations, as well as code of conduct. If you have any questions, there are a number of people around who I'm sure would be happy to help you answer those questions. If not, come and see me. So for everyone who's here, please join the Meet Echo room. That's how we know that you were attending, and that's how you will get the right to go and stand at that microphone and yell at someone. Please don't yell at someone. Rowan's a very nice person, and he didn't do anything to deserve that. Announce your name when speaking, and for those of you who are remote, keep mute unless you are actively speaking. And we have a minute taker already. Thank you, Tuba. And we will move now on to, Heather likes having this slide. I condensed the sort of introduction material. SPICE is essentially a group where we're looking at some of the sort of the holes in the sort of digital credentials and presentations ecosystem, and looking to fill them in sensible ways, including potentially talking about profiles for particular use cases as we've identified them. We do have a use case document. We will talk about that toward the end of this session. That is guiding the work that we do here, but it is not necessarily going to be one of those things that's definitive in terms of completely covering all of the use cases. We're just using it to inform some of our decision making. Our agenda today, hopefully I can keep this one short. We're going to spend some time on the SOD COTS, apparently, is now the official way that we pronounce them. And that's work that's been very active recently. I think Heather had Mike doing that one, but Mike's not here. Rowan's going to do that, right? Yeah. Right. Tag teaming is perfectly fine. And then we're going to talk about glue, and then we've got a couple of essentially new work pieces that we'll try to squeeze in before we get a brief update on the use case draft, which I think just updated today with some real content. So Brent will give us a bit of an update on that one. Okay, so now my computer's gone to sleep. Would you like to come up and give us the, and hopefully you have colorful slides and everything's going to be happy.
I think you already won.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rowan, and I'm giving this presentation on behalf of the authors, me, Ori, Hank, and Mike Prorok. Okay, so first, I'm going to give a quick overview of selective disclosure COTS for anyone who was not at the previous meeting or hasn't read the draft. Selective disclosure COTS allow a holder to get a CBOR web token from an issuer and then either safely blind, redact, or reveal, as in disclose, some of those claims to a verifier. The holder can disclose all, some, or none of the disclosable claims. It's the issuer's choice. The issuer dictates which claims can be blinded / disclosed. And it can include decoys to make sure that if, for example, if having, people outside of the US get 6 claims and people inside the US get 7 claims, it can go and add a claim so that everybody has 7 claims so that the number of disclosures doesn't leak some information, for example. So we are updating the definition of what is allowed as a map key in COT, so that once that's done, every SD COT will be a valid COT, but not vice versa. So some valid COTs are not valid SD COTs. There's a little slide about the map keys and simple values and everything. Okay. Finally, like I said, the issuer decides. So how the issuer decides which claims to disclose or not disclose, that's out of scope. The issuer does not have to make claims disclosable if it doesn't want to, but consequently, the holder can decide whether to use the issued COT or not. If it doesn't like what it sees, it doesn't have to use it. Finally, it includes a public key in that confirmation claim for the holder. So there's always a binding to the holder's public key, and that's a good thing. Okay, so what can be disclosed? Well, I will start with what can't be disclosed. So any of the COT claims that are part of the validation of the COT itself, with the exception of the subject. So you can't blind the issuer, the audience, the expiration date, et cetera, not the confirmation key, blah, blah, blah. The important thing about what you can blind is it includes claims at any level of the hierarchy, as shown here, and there will be an example where I talk about nested claims and how that works, how disclosing, how redacting works in that context. Okay, so what does a disclosure look like for a key value style claim? So here I had a claim that said claim 500, which was, let's hypothetically, registered in a registry, the CBOR Web Token Claims registry as inspection passed, and the value is true. So I have a salt, I have the value, and if I have a key, I have the key here, stick that in an array, and I bstring encode that. And it gives us some CBOR that looks like that. For an array, same thing, except there's no claim key. It's just a value. And so either way, I take this bstring of a disclosure array, I hash it, and then the hash becomes the redacted form of that claim. And so I can place that in the payload. So for things that were map keys and values, those get put in a special key, in an array with a special key with the name redacted map keys. The actual value in CBOR, what we decided last time and over the course of discussing things on the mailing list is that the nicest way to do this in CBOR would be to use a simple value which is registered specifically for this purpose. So here is simple value number 59. And so that's, whenever you see that, you know that that is specifically a list of redacted keys at that level. And then you include the hashes as B strings. For a value in an array, we put the CBOR tag 60 and the redacted form inside there. Okay. All right, so when a holder goes to the issuer and says, hey, please give me an SD COT, it says, okay, here are all of the disclosures for all of the non-decoy redacted forms that are in this document. The holder can verify that those all look good, that the issuer isn't talking smack about the holder, that there's nothing there that it doesn't want to go out to the rest of the world. And then it picks 0, some, or none of those disclosures. And then it generates a holder key binding token. So the key binding token is itself a COT, and it has this very special claim, the KCWT claim. So this is a confirmation key COT. This was already defined elsewhere, and we just used it. So there's a confirmation key COT, and in that we put the issuer COT, where in the issuer COT, in the unprotected section, we put the claims the holder wants to disclose. So the unprotected section in the issuer COT can be changed without invalidating the signature, because it's not covered by the signature of the issuer COT. But because the entire blob is inside of a map key inside of the protected header of the key binding token, it is signed altogether by the key binding token, and so nobody can modify the list of claims there. So it ends up being quite nice. It ends up simplifying the way it actually is a lot more straightforward than sort of unwrapping all of this in an ST jot. And it's been implemented by a couple of implementers, and it seems to work quite nicely. Okay, last thing for this overview is just giving an example of nested disclosures. So here at the sort of most deep level, I've got some claims about different elements of a physical address. So anyone who has been to Japan might recognize this style of addressing. So I've got a block building the floor. So I replace those things with a redacted array. And then I go to the next level and I replace those items. And then finally, I replace the items at the top level. And all I see in the payload are those 3 items, but I can have many disclosures. If I want to disclose something that's deep inside, I need to also disclose the intermediate containers up to the root level of the payload. Okay, I did mention decoys. If you want to make a decoy, you just make a salt in an array, you hash it, that's your decoy. That is the overview. Anybody have any questions or comments about that before I go on?
Yeah, just one thing on chat. That decoy, you disclose the decoy. You said that you didn't before. The issuer would disclose it to the holder. The holder's
sure.
got it. Okay.
Yeah. Hi, Justin.
That's awkward. Hi, Justin Richard. So when you're disclosing something that's sort of deep down in, are you obligated to disclose the entire structure, or as in like all siblings and stuff all the way through that path, or just the tree? It's the entire object structure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's just a clarification.
Yeah. Currently, you need to have a way to get a path to get to the tree. If there's siblings, you don't need to disclose those siblings, right? You can disclose a redacted version of the siblings in each place.
But there'll be elements of that tree structure that you can't avoid disclosing. And if the sibling nodes are not redactable, or rather not covered by the hash, then you'll have no choice at that point.
And there's an example in the draft as well of a nested example, and some of the the example is it's an inspection, a set of inspection certificates, and so it has sort of like here are all of my inspection records, and that's an array. And for some of the items, like the country is just plain always disclosed, and for some of them it's redacted, right? So that's an example where the issuer might do something like that, and you can choose your own adventure. Okay, so changes since the last time we were together in Dublin. So there was quite a lot of work done on this draft, and these are the normative changes. So the first thing was we made a little section about this is an update to the COT RFC to say, in addition to integers and text strings as claim keys, you can also have tagged integers or text strings, and you can have simple value keys. We said it says you cannot have tagged keys. You can't have tagged simple values. So you can have simple value, you can have integer, string, tagged integer, tagged string. Those are your choices. Simple type 29 indicates an array of blinded claims. That is not in the version that is on Data Tracker, but it is merged into GitHub. I would have posted a new version, but there's one other thing which is merged, which may be controversial, and so I wanted to get the temperature of the room on that before issuing a new version. The SD claims array, I've got a slide showing how this works, but it's no longer B-string encoded. The array is no longer B-string encoded. But the individual items inside of the array, those are B-string encoded because they're hashed, and I can describe why. I clarified a bunch of stuff about optional versus mandatory claims, not using duplicate claims in the same map, and clarified that an SD-COT can have 0 redacted claims. And then finally, I added a thing for encrypted disclosures. This is merged, but not in the latest Data Tracker version. So I already showed an example that showed this usage, but you guys asked for this. We put it in there. If you don't like it, speak now, or please hold your peace. I won't say forever because that doesn't work at IETF.
Close your square brackets. You need to close your square brackets. Don't worry. Carry on. Inspection dates.
Oh, yeah. Okay, SD claims. I mentioned this earlier. So note in the green, I've got a B-string encoding around those. There is no longer a B-string encoding around the yellow bracket for the SD claims array. Okay, then one of the new things, encrypted disclosures. So why is this there? So some verifiers, as it turns out, have sort of internal structure. It's not sort of like I've got the verifier. It's like the verifiers, and there are two concrete protocol usage examples of this. One is RATs. So you could have a RATs workload appraiser, and a RAD's platform appraiser, and you want them to see different things. Likewise, in MLS, there's now a MLS credentials, SD-COT and SD-JOT credentials spec that is a draft 00 that individual 00 that I just talked about 30 minutes ago, an hour ago. In this case, you could give information you could give a claim, disclose a claim to group members in an MLS group, but not give it to the MLS distribution service, which often is privy to credentials. So, whoops, this has been updated, but yeah, basically there is a nonce, ciphertext, and a MAC. So when you take the disclosure, you encrypt it with an AEAD algorithm. If you don't say anything, it's going to use algorithm 1, which is AES 128 GCM. If you want a different one, you can stick that in the protected header. If you need to look up, if you need to find, okay, I have a key and I don't know which encrypted disclosure this goes with, you could use the MAC here in order to figure out which one you're referring to, or you could just try them all. Anybody have any questions on this? Yeah, feel free to ask on the list too. That's fine. Okay. All right, we also have some other non-normative changes. So there's some IANA registrations of the media types and also of the, what are they? Are they COPE types or are they something else? That there's a registry of integer numbers that you use to refer formats, COPE formats, format types. Yeah. 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 So those are in there. I wrote a new walkthrough of the protocol at the very beginning. Ori mostly wrote new security and privacy considerations. So there's some non-trivial text in there now, finally. I added a nested disclosure example. And most importantly, all the examples were regenerated, or there were CBOR examples which were regenerated with correct signatures, salts, hashes, dates, etc., using a script that's in there. There are still a few bugs that I'm working out, but yeah, mostly like most of the EDN and all the CBOR in that directory are generated from these scripts. And so when we make changes, it's easy to update and get correct signatures and so on and so forth. Let's see. Finally, there is in the implementation status section, we just got informed that there's a new open source implementation in Rust available on GitHub, so that's in there as well. Okay. Moving on, I have some open issues. Okay, there's one PR in there right now, which is a fix for the way the encryption works, the encrypted disclosures. So there was an attack possible. The salt was being used, as in that slide, was being used in 2 places. So that allowed a confirmation attack on a disclosure. So instead, there's a nonce, and if you need to sort of find the thing, you use the MAC instead. So yeah, that PR is in there. Hasn't been reviewed yet, but there's a PR for that. There's a request to be able to use the cozy key thumbprint as a valid confirmation method in protocols where the key might be shared out of band. So that's kind of a nice thing. Another issue is, I'm going to talk about this one in the next slide, but this is basically the order of disclosures for the value. So the proposal is to make it always the second value in an array. instead of having it move back and forth. I'll talk about that in a sec. Somebody said we should explain why the order of the disclosures is the choice of the holder and what the consequences are for the verifier. And also, I just need to go and I need to add an example of a decoy digest. That's just some work on my part. Finally, there's grunt work verifying CBOR with CDDL, verifying EDN corresponds to CBOR, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Hank, did you want to say something?
Yeah, but I'm not going there.
Okay.
We've only got a couple of minutes.
Yeah, hi, this is Hank. Going back to the, this is a tech team without camera. So the ordering, especially the canonical ordering, which is an awful term, I think that was due to some implementation requirements, actually. So Rust kind of sometimes is very simplistic. And I think that's nice to know. Maybe you were talking about this next, but I wanted to highlight that all the things that they should just work, like EDN against example, CDDL against CBOR, and so on. We try to do in the CI that to make Martin even more happy. So it's auto checked, but this hasn't been done yet. And also the sequencing of items. Yeah, a lot of there can be hidden channels, like messages and ordering and such. So I think that's important to highlight, but I didn't think about that to highlight earlier.
Yeah. So briefly, the motivation for this is that in pretty much any statically typed library, it's easier if you've got the second item is always, if the second item exists, it always is this type, instead of I'm going to have a union, cast it to this type, cast it to that type, or whatever equivalent in your choice of statically typed language. The consequence of that is not that you can't do it the other way; it's that it's actually faster if it's in the same order. Now, why did we use this order to begin with? It was because that's what SD-JOTs do, and SD-JOTs have a order based on human readability, because the value is likely to be the longest thing, and so the value is last, because the claim is likely to be a string and likely to be quite short. So I think this is a reasonable trade-off for us to get some more performance in exchange for less human readability, because we're a binary format. So this should be a conscious decision. Obviously, anytime we diverge from SD-JOT, we want to have a good reason to do it, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't make any changes that are different than SD-JOT. Okay, so next steps. We're going to keep cranking on open issues. We have a couple implementations now, plus the 2/3 implementation in Python that's in the draft directory itself, used for generating the documents. Do some interop testing, but I would very much like this to be at a stage where we can go to working group last call by Madrid.
Anything else? Hank?
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, so the final part about the encryption, it's rather a good discussion on the list to have. Should we do this in this document, or is this a separate document? I actually don't know. You were highlighting you want it to be done. I think it's now so mature that this is okay to have in this ID, actually. But well, that's a very good decision, just bringing that up, because we're adding extras and all in this. This is not a boiling the sea problem. It's a well scoped feature.
Yeah, it's a small section.
Welcome.
Hey, everybody. I'm here to talk about glue again. First, I want to thank everybody who gave feedback on previous versions of this. Very gratefully received, and we listened to and put all of it in. First off, yeah, you guys don't care about that. Why am I doing this? The company that I work for, Trade Verified, we make claims about organizations. And we really would like a consistent and meaningful way of doing that, so that when we find a GLN and put it in a document, we can say that's a GLN and give you some way of finding out what a GLN is and what that means, and maybe the source material for that. There are so many different ID schemes out there. This is not the 13th. This is just a way to wrap all the other ones so that we have a consistent way of talking about them. That's all this is. This isn't replacing anything else. This isn't a new one. This isn't a new pen. This is just, is it a pen? Is it a GLN? Is it a something else? Is it a social security number that is a sole proprietorship business identifier? I don't care. I just want to know that it's a business identifier, and so I can pass that to somebody else and say, this is the business I'm talking about. So that's why we're doing this. And some of the data models that our customers require us to use require that string to not just be a string, but to be a URN. So we're like, okay, let's run with that. So what we have here, I have a screen. I don't have to turn around. Sorry. So instead of the 54-1650477, we would say, here's this URN. A glue identifier is an entry in a URN namespace. It gives us context so that we can look up more information in a registry. And that's all that it is. So what is this draft? Oh, so and this is, hey, this is what the registry could look like. So the things that we changed since last time that we talked, instead of inventing a whole new URN thing, we're just using URN namespaces because that seems to make sense. So what this draft does at this point, it says there's a URN namespace under the IETF namespace for SPICE. So the group can do anything else with URN namespaces that it wants to do. Within that SPICE URN namespace, we're like, here's one called glue. And that glue namespace leads to the registry where that looks like that, or would look like that. It says, oh, this is a GS1 number, this is a Glyph number, this is done in Bradstreet.
Hi, I'm Rowan. So if you go to the slide that had the table with the example schemes, I would really love it if the thing after glue before the next colon was a reverse domain name. So for example, if you've talked about an IRS, employer ID number, be gov.irs. Name of your thing there. I think that would prevent some kind of ugly confusion attacks where somebody over here has they have some ID number with the same 3-letter acronym as somebody over here with a different 3-letter acronym. One of them register it first, the other one does want to register it, and then they have to kind of modify it. It becomes like airport codes. If you prefix it with a domain name, or if you put in, a reverse domain name colon in the thing, you avoid that problem. Nobody knows, there's no ambiguity about what the thing is.
Cool. Well, yeah, I think that's an idea worth exploring.
Hi, Justin Richer, up here to disagree with Rowan. I think we actually want something that is more akin to airport codes. I think that the abstraction that something like that a structure like this allows is an important feature. Domain names change hands. They change meanings. TLDs disappear. The .io domain may or may not disappear at some point. We're not sure. Depends on what Britain's going to get up to, apparently. And so things like that aren't nearly as stable. I think that at a given point in time, it's dereferenceable and it makes sense and it's clear. I totally agree with that. So, gov.irs might mean something reasonable today. As a US citizen, I can't guarantee you that that's going to be reasonable in a year. It might point to something very different. Yes, the chatter was that a year is optimistic. Where's the lie, though? Anyway, the point being that something like this is really meant to be a dispatch into somebody else's namespace that they own. However, anytime you set up something like this, and if you're going to address this at some part of your presentation, please feel free to forward point to that. This creates a land grab. It's a new namespace that's not claimed yet. There is the ability to squat namespaces and code points and stuff like that anytime anything like this comes up, because somebody has to decide that SSN means United States Social Security Number and not something else.
Yeah, the draft has some language that addresses that, the requirements for global uniqueness and some of the identifier registration considerations. Whether that's sufficient, I would love to get feedback.
Mike Jones, I believe that in IANA registries, IANA is the disambiguation point, not reverse DNS. So we don't need to invent something that's bespoke to this registry. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you've got what you need.
Christian?
Better now? Okay, sorry. If any upcoming GLN is already URN shaped or already has a place in the URN tree, will that still need to be folded under URN IETF SPICE glue, or can this stay as it is and thus reduce the number of the level of nesting of identifiers and identifiers?
The way, I mean, in order to point to the registry, I think we'd need the namespacing. My expectation is that specifications that would make use of this, if they wanted to have a glued JOT claim or something like that, then they could say, whenever you do this, don't say URN, IETF, SPICE, glue, just understand that that's the value that needs to be appended before you actually go there or, you know, recognize it. So I think you could get some space saving in that way. But, so this, sorry, going back here. So yeah, we changed to the URN namespacing. We changed some of the verbiage around whether it's an organization or like, so that this is organizational, not companies. We actually have a security considerations section now, which is good. We added Mr. Mike Jones as a co-author. So we've addressed all of the feedback that we got during the last IETF, and I would hope that this working group could consider adopting this.
That's the question, folks. If you want to get up and argue against that, now's a good opportunity. You can always send an email to the list for or against adoption. I've heard a lot of active discussion on this one, but not a lot of positive indications in one direction or other. So there's the microphone. If you want this to happen.
Yeah. There are a couple of implementations that are in progress, and I mean, folks are starting to think about using it, which is nice, but
This is the sort of thing that fits in our charter reasonably neatly.
Do you want to use the poll tool to ask for, against, and undecided?
Oh boy, I hate that tool, but sure, why not, Mike?
you could hum.
There you go. That's just Mike. I don't know, I was just typing. I wasn't going to ask if you huff it or anything like that. That's plenty. That's good. The numbers keep going up. What happens if it gets to 100?
Y2K problem.
Auto adoption.
Auto adoption.
It goes straight to IES.
Anyway, that's enough of that one. I think that's pretty useful. I've got to talk to Heather about setting something up, but we'll probably do some confirmation on the list on that one. We've heard from you guys a couple of times about this one, and haven't really heard any strong pushback. It seems like it fits perfectly within the charter. All right, perfectly on time, Brent. What's next? I've lost track of my agenda. Oh, there it is. OpenID Connect. Someone's going to ask for slides. Yep. I will send you slides. Do you want control of those slides?
I can say you say next slide. And there are only a handful of them.
All right, cool. Go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to try to be quick and to the point. So last time at IETF, I presented this draft about registering some of the 19 OIDC claims in COT. So next slide, please. So the goal of this draft is to register those 19 claims, so except for the sub in the CBOR Web Token Claims INA registry. And the goal is also to go through standard action, because most of those claims are pretty prevalent because they pertain to personal information. So they are used in a lot of places. And so the goal is to encode them with 2 bytes. And so that's why I want to go for standard action here, to have the smallest amount of byte possible to represent those ones. Next slide, please. So the claims are talking about are those ones plus 7 ones, the 7 or ones that are cropped. So last time at Dublin, we said that we want those to remain pertaining to user information. So there was a question about whether we should allow name to be about an organization name or something like that. So because of how COT works, so you cannot relabel to give more semantic, because you just have an integer label, so you cannot do that. So we said that this should just stand for personal user information. Basically, that's what we said. Next slide, please. So what was done since last time? So the draft went twice through INA registry, review, and everything was fixed as by INA. There was a CDDL added to give a clearer information. And also the address claim was turned into CBOR mapping with the exact same semantic as it is within OIDC, meaning either everything or nothing could be optionally present or not. So that's the exact same semantic, and all the rest have the exact same types in JSON as in CBOR. So that's the current status. So the draft is at version 2. And next slide, please. And so what I'm going to reiterate, so I'm going to ask for expert review on that one. I didn't get any since last time. And I also wanted to have the working group adoption about this one. I don't know if it's too soon, but I think the feedback also from last time was that someone who said he wanted it to go fast because the topic is quite straightforward. So why not asking for working group adoptions?
Indeed, why not? The mic lines are open.
Yeah, I think this is super useful, and I'll point out that the examples, even with the inspection examples, it needed an address, and so I used the address from this draft because it was like, well, I need something. So I think that's an indicator of how important this kind of information is going to be.
Yep. Thanks, Ron. Mike.
These are useful claims given that we are creating tokens and credentials representing stuff in the real world. These claims are used that way for JOTs. Why not put them in the COT registry as well? I support adoption.
And Mr. Barnes.
Yeah, Mr. Barnes, and I think we should adopt this. Like, I want this yesterday. Let's do it.
Sounds like that's pretty uniform. Again, I'll have a chat with her. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't send a message shortly after this asking for adoption on this one as well. Is that right? Excellent.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your time. And thanks for being prompt. We have time back. The next presentation. Public key, don't we? Oh, yes, here we go. Let me get the slides up. I can kick Richard. Ah, damn it. Didn't get to. Come and grab the clicker and introduce yourself. Let's see.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, the topic I'm going to share is a public key service provider for verification in multiple issuers and verifiers. And we all know that in regular verification, the issuer sends a token to the holder, and the holder displays the token to the verifier. Then the verifier uses the public key of the issuer to verify the token. Yes, so in this procedure, how the verifier gets the public key of the issuer is an important issue. So there are some existing methods to solve these problems. For example, the issuer can maintain and configure a local trusted list, which lists the public keys they trust. And the verifier can also send the public key to the verifier to help the verifier verify the token. But with the development of Web3, there will be more and more people will join the verification. For example, everyone could be an issuer and everyone could be a verifier. So the traditional method, I think it is not suitable for the future trust relationships establishment. Yes. And here example, this person, let me call him Tom. And Tom is an employee from the express company, and he holds a staff which is staff credential, which is issued by its company. And he makes a call via the telecom operator's network to have the recipient confirm that this call is a legitimate call, not a nuisance one. The Tom can send his staff credential to the operators. Then after the operator successfully verify the token, and the recipient phone can display that it is from a legitimate call. So for the telecom, for the express company, and his credential needs to be verified by multiple telecom operators. And conversely, for the telecom operators, he needs to verify multiple credentials from different express company. So when the story involved more and more participants, for example, the manufacturer and the malls or shops, the trust relationships will become more and more complex. So we can see that in the future, the trust relationship is no longer a one-to-one or one-to-many trust relationships. It will form a very complex, flexible, and dynamic trust relationships. So the traditional method to get the public key one by one, I think it's not suitable for the future requirement. So in this document, we introduced the PKSP, which is a public key service provider, and he acts as a intermediate role in the verification process. And the PKSP can receive the public key registration from the different issuers and can store them securely and tamper-proofly. And when the verifier asks for a public key, the PKSP can provide it the corresponding key. So this what does PKSP do? And so we can say PKSP should be an open, a robust, and a trustworthy service. So it needs a very robust technology to implement the PKSP. And so we introduced the distributed ledger here. So there are some features about the distributed ledger. First, it is multi-party consensus-based. And only after the majority of the node give their approval to the registration, then the registration can be recorded on the distributed ledger. The second is it is decentralized storage. so it can prevent from the single point failure. And then the last one, it has smart contract. Smart contract is a program that deployed on the distributed ledger, so it can automatically execute it. So in the future, we will design the detailed technology of the PKSP service and the detailed design of the PKSP ledger. Yes. So anyone, any comments and discussion are welcomed. Thank you.
Does anyone have any feedback here? Lines are open. We have a couple of minutes here, extra, thanks to earlier efficiency. So, yeah, Justin's. Oh, Richard may have beaten you.
Okay.
You can impersonate.
Yeah,
Richard if you
the
want
Meet
to.
Echo tool was not cooperating.
Yeah.
Anyway, hi, Justin. I might be missing something, but doesn't this sort of kick the can down the road by one step and say you have to trust the key of the key provider at some point? Or
Yes.
you have to trust the trust provider? So what would stop an ecosystem from requiring that to have a trust provider?
Yes.
And so on and so forth. What is this one layer add that just pulling the keys doesn't?
Yes, as a verifier, first I need to get the issuer's public key. So how do I get the public key? There are some existing methods. For example, I have already the public key. I already have the public key. Or the holder can send me the public key. But that's not enough, I think. Maybe in the future, we need a lot of public keys from different issuers. So yes, the verifier needs to trust the PKSP. It acts as a trusted, decentralized trusted center in the verification.
Okay, but wouldn't the regular ecosystem we would expect a verifier to exist in have multiple PKSPs that it would need to then trust?
I think it could be help to exist. It's not to replace the existing verification. It will help to help the process of the verification. Yes, can work together.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's Richard Barnes. So yeah, conceptually, you're not wrong. There is a need to do this sort of matchmaking and distribute public keys so that relying parties can verify signatures from issuers. This is a problem that has come up many times in history. Back in the 90s and 2000s, we had things like bridge CAs that would connect different, yeah, no, they still exist, but they're less fashionable these days. That would connect different PKIs together, where folks were trusting one PKI needed to extend trust into a different domain, and they would have signatures that would connect them. In the OpenID ecosystem, there's HTTPS-based discovery, by which if I choose to trust an issuer with a given name, I can use HTTPS queries of a given form to find their name. That's effectively a public key distribution system of the character you've described here. But it's decentralized. It's entirely decentralized. There's no central, even the central organization of a blockchain is not there. You just have a web server. So I think before we dive into all the Web3 complexity, it would be useful to look at some of those historical design patterns and see why those don't make sense in this world.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, okay, thank you. So Brent, you want to give us an update on the, whatever that was? Use cases. Yeah, use cases. I'll see if I can put them on the screen or something. Okay. Yeah. That's not the one.
So at the hour before the deadline, I tried to submit changes to the use cases document and used the wrong email address, so they didn't publish. And then I came back and was like, I guess the deadline's there. So as soon as the deadline freed, I submitted the changes. The use cases document has a number of use cases in it now. So please look at them, review them, tell us what's wrong with them. This is on top of an unfortunate
circumstance that since we started the use cases document, I started working for the other author. And so now we could probably use another author that's not in the same organization. Where we started, we were different now. So we could use another author. We can kick Mike out and you can work with me, or vice versa if that's a deal breaker. But we have use cases. I have them pulled up here.
I'm not able to work out how to do that.
That's all right.
Maybe I
So
need to join the queue.
we originally had use cases that described so we had a list of use cases we wanted to fill out. And we had a couple of them filled out, but now we have filled out for micro-credentials in education, physical supply chain, IoT control systems and critical infrastructure, authenticity and provenance, offline exchange of credentials. I just realized that this probably doesn't need a security consideration section. I'll probably get rid of that one. But anyway, there's a couple more use cases that if folks are interested in that particular use case, we could use that expertise. Embedded credentials and digital wallet use cases aren't something that I felt comfortable just inventing from whole cloth. So feedback there would be really useful. And then feedback on the text that was put in for these use cases that are in the system. Please review, please let us know, and we'll get things better. And if you would like to join us in use case land, please reach out.
Excellent. Mike.
Mike Jones once again. There's plenty of precedent for documents which have only a single editor from one company or multiple editors from the same company. I wrote one with Christina Yasuda last year when we were, no, that's more than a year ago, when we were both at Microsoft. I'd written them with Tony Nadalin. That said, if people want to join you in use case land, they're probably welcome, but I don't think you need to fret yourself about it.
Okay, I'll stop worrying.
It may have been a plea. Please help.
Well, I get that.
Hi, Rowan. The example in the SDCOT draft is a sort of generic inspection. And the interesting thing for me was when I saw how different people interpreted this. And so I heard someone explaining the example to someone, one using an elevator inspection, one using a fire extinguisher inspection. And then I was on a diving boat as we were taking the expired lifeboat from one of their other boats in for reinspection. And it was like, that might be a good use case. So hopefully the example in the draft is already a good enough use case for you. But if you want more text, please hit me up.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, well, I think that wraps up our session for today. If there is any other business, stand up and scream right now. Otherwise,
You want to mention the architecture document?
yeah. So Heather and I have been speaking with the folks who are working on the architecture document. We're trying to get them to update something and produce something that's a little more, I guess, adoptable. Currently, they don't have the cycles to do the work. And if there's anyone who's interested in working on architecture style documentation, I'm not sure that we're necessarily committed to publishing work in that area, but if we have good work and it looks like we have a document that's pointed in the right direction anyway, then we would do what we can to advance that work. That is helpful work to help guide all of the other work that we do, if nothing else. So if you're interested in working on that, then let us know. Otherwise, we will continue to thrash those people who showed just the tiniest glimmer of interest in the first instance and see if we can get something out of them. These are all incredibly busy people, so we may be successful or not. Sounds like Hank's volunteering to write a document for us.
No, I just wanted to highlight that it's a deliverable in the charter.
Right.
So,
So that is something that we will deliver if we can. But I've known many working groups to have failed to achieve those milestones, and that's okay as long as we get the protocol work done, and the protocol work makes sense. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We're in this sort of failed state. That's not to say we've given up trying. So if there's any interest there, even just sending in a review of the document in its present state and where you think the holes are and what needs to be done, that'd be very useful. So thank you, everyone, and thanks for attending. Meeting is closed. How do I do that? I can leave the room. Yeah. All right. It is not, because it predates all of this. Yeah. I think it's one of Leif's drafts.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. Then I remember. It's on the list. Good. Well, I'm just typing.
Yeah. We're all doing the best we can. Oh, my computer came apart finally.